see, I guess I can talk here. Yeah.
Oh, you need some help, Hedges?
Sorry.
I guess I can just talk through this. Now, the other Wednesday night, I was over at Union Street Station, and I was kind of dancing with the young women there, very charming young ladies. And a fellow walks up to me and says, "Do you smoke marijuana?" And I said, "No, I don't." And it's true, I don't smoke marijuana. I also don't smoke regular cigarettes. I've never walked a mile for a Camel, and I never have called for Philip Morris or any other brand, because they're not really my thing. I also haven't heard marijuana called by that name in a while. It takes me back to when I was a youngster, when I was in my teens in high school. Back in high school, I remember, kids used to go steady. That meant that the boy took his class ring and put it on the girl's finger, and if a girl accepted a boy's ring, basically she became his property. She couldn't talk to any other boy, she couldn't schmooze with them, she certainly couldn't French or fuck with any of them. And I sort of wondered if before the ring thing happened, whether the boy and girl maybe had a fuck test.
Oh, God.
Because they weren't going to have anybody else until they graduated. This takes me back to another time, the Vietnam War.
Wow.
In the Vietnam War, everybody who was cool was in a commune working to stop the war, to end the war. And the boys kind of had a certain advantage there. According to the commune rules, a boy could ask any girl he wanted to sleep with him on a given evening, and she had no choice, she had to do it. She had to tell herself, okay, this is for the cause, this is for the cause, this will help end the war. Now, how that would happen, just because she gave him good head, I don't know. And a lot of babies were born in communes, because when a guy said to a girl, "You and me tonight, babe," she had to keep saying, "This is what it's all about," without telling him what she thinks he's all about. So a lot of babies were born, some of them probably with very questionable paternity. Who was daddy? And that was important later when she needed child support. Who was she going to ask? President Nixon? Was she actually going to send Tricky Dick a letter saying, "Dear Mr. President, I was knocked up because of your Vietnam War policies. Now I have a child to raise, a young boy, and I need assistance. I want him to go to the very best private schools, to take piano lessons, and to dress like Richie Rich did in the comics. Then later, I want him to go to an Ivy League school, no little community college bullshit for my boy, and then on to graduate school, so that someday he can be a professor at my alma mater, the University of Michigan."
Go blue.
Now, I realize that all of this is fucking expensive, so I have made a list estimating the cost of it all, and I am sending this bill to you, Mr. President. Please remit. And what would President Nixon say to that? "My fellow Americans, it has come to my attention that some of my anti-war opponents in the Vietnam conflict are having difficulties, and one stupid little cunt who couldn't keep her boyfriend supplied with protection on his pee-pee, she has her hand out wanting something from me. Well, I have this to say. Go suck eggs, bitch! Now, as you see, the time was right for the woman's lib movement. You had Roe versus Wade happening, and woe unto the husband who said about his wife, "My wife, I think I'll keep her." That was a notorious television commercial in the 70s. And there was an enterprising young writer who was a composer, and it was his idea to create a musical about this movement. So he wrote a show called Liberation, all about women at a factory rebelling against their chauvinistic boss. Well, he wrote that show, and it sat on the shelf for 22 years. And then some community theater group in Chicago, who were absolutely financially strapped and didn't have any money to produce their final show of the season, went over to him and offered to produce the show if he would pay all the expenses. And he did. They mounted the show. They hired a music director. He was a young man who was very talented, and he kind of preferred boys to girls, except his sister. His little sister, Becky. She played the lead in Liberation. Now, I wasn't in the cast of that show, but I had the job of sitting by the stage door. And if you've seen movies that are set in a theater, a live theater where live performances are being staged, you see a guy sitting by the stage door and everybody calls him Pop. Well, it was appropriate that that was my role to play in that show, because I had a neighbor at that time. He was not the most polite young man I'd ever met, and his girlfriend was a trash mouth, and he always called me Pops. And I would sometimes walk by their door on my way to the elevator and hear them cussing each other out. I remember one particular time she was yelling at him, "I put up with your fucking shit, now you want to leave me?" Well, I don't think he did, at least not while they were my neighbors. They moved away eventually. But I'll tell you, if any girl that I liked said that to me, I don't think I'd want to be with her anymore. I think I'd get the hell out too. But getting back to Liberation, it opened for a 3-week run, and then it was cut down to 2, because the tickets weren't being sold. And the playwright decided he didn't want to pay for another week of rent to mount the goddamn thing. So, the music director now didn't have a show to do. So he pulled out one he had written. He had written this show, Psycho, an American musical. And he wanted to mount a production of that. He got a lot of the Liberation people to work on it, and he gave his sweet little Becky the role of that Janet Leigh played in the movie. Now, Psycho in the original book is very different than the movie. The character of Norman Bates in the book has an incestuous relationship with his mother, which is kind of glossed over in the movie. But in the musical, they put all that stuff back in. And they mounted a staged reading. Now, I came from here from doing a stage reading over at the depot. And they sit you with a script in your hand, and you read from it. Well, this stage reading was done a little differently, particularly the shower scene. Little Becky came out naked.
No.
And I will say she had a very nice bod, but I never heard anything about the show afterwards. I think this t-shirt is probably all that survives from it. And after 22 years, I don't think some theater group is going to say, "Let's go and do this." Don't think that's happening this time. Sorry, guys. Now, This is the 50th anniversary of a lot of very significant events in American history. It was 50 years ago this year that Martin Luther King made his I Have a Dream speech. 50 years ago that President Kennedy was assassinated. Also 50 years ago that the longtime publisher of the Record Eagle, Austin C. Batdorf, who ran the paper for decades, he died. It's also the year that General Hospital, the soap opera, premiered on ABC. It is the longest running dramatic program currently on TV. Now, General Hospital has a great deal of respect for their young actors, particularly when they have their shirts off. If you watch General Hospital, most days you have one young hunk or another bare-chested with his pecs firmly on display. They also believe in having romance and sex within the family unit, like the Corinthos brothers, Morgan and Michael. Now, a new girl last spring popped into town. Her name was Kiki, and she came with her slut mother, Ava. And Kiki quickly became Morgan's girlfriend, but then she met Michael, and she became his girlfriend too. Now, Michael is played by an actor who's done the role for 3 years and is the kind of good-looking kid that the teenage girls are going to say, "Ooh, he's cute." Morgan is more Italian-looking, and he's a recent recast. So you can see who has the greater priority in the minds of the writers. So the two guys are with Kiki. Now, her mother has always told her that Franco was her dad. If Franco is her dad, it turns out that she is supposed to be Michael's cousin. And that means Michael is off limits, even though she kind of likes him better. And Morgan is determined that he is going to have her. Then, later on, it turns out Franco really isn't her father at all. It's Silas. That means Michael is not her cousin. And Morgan, he finds out the truth about all this, but he keeps it hushed up. And he persuades her to go through a wedding ceremony with him. Then later, it all comes out who Daddy really is, and that means that Michael is available to her, and she goes over to Morgan and says, "I don't want to be married to you anymore." So Morgan looks in the direction of slut Ava, and mother-in-law and son-in-law get under the sheets together. And Kiki says, "You can't have sex with my mother." And he said, "Sorry, babe, already had that." Well, the show is called GH by many people. Now, GH can stand for General Hospital, but it could also stand for Good Humby, because there's a lot of that in that show. Well, I want to wish all of you a very happy Sweetest Day, and may you all find some GH with somebody later this evening. Good night.